So this is part 4 of my ideal Elder Scrolls game. In part 3 I talked about the basic factions and how I would like character progression to be tied into factional progression instead of just you leveling up. Because that's kind of, it has been an old. In this part I will be talking about how I would like to, I will go more in depth about reputation and how I would like the world and how I would like factions to interact with one another and with you, and the world itself to interact with the player character. So without much ado, let's get into it after the cut. So the big thing about Skyrim and Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 and all that type of shit is the game is built around the concept of essentially everything being predicated on a static world. So everything that's happening, the status quo is being maintained and nothing else is going on. That shit is old and tiring. Frankly speaking, I am personally tired of that shit. So here's my idea. Here's my idea when it comes to how to handle factions and reputation, okay? I think it would be a good thing for the Elder Scrolls franchise, in my ideal Elder Scrolls game, for the world, instead of being static, i.e. the status quo is maintained until the player character comes and some type of change is wrought through questing or, adventuring or whatever, through player agency. I think player agency should hold should have some semblance, but there should be dynamism between the various factions, and this would be reflected through your reputation. So hear me out. Okay, in my ideal Elder Scrolls game, it would be essentially, it would take place on a largish island. Let's say about the size of Australia. An island that's bordering Akavir, okay? And basically you have the natives who are Akaviri, you have the Empire, you have the Thalmor, you have Sentinel, because, the Red Guard basically went independent after kicking the Thalmor's ass. Plus you have the Dark Elves trying to essentially gain some type of toehold in order to buy some time till they can revitalize themselves. So that's 1, 2. And the Empire, let's see, the Empire, the Thalmor, the denizens of Hammerfell, so the Red Guard, the Dark Elves, that's 4 factions. The 5th faction will be, let's see, who would I want to be a 5th faction? The 5th faction could be, let's say, the Bosmer, who were basically like, look, we want out of, we're trying to get our own spot in the sun. And then finally, the 6th faction would be the native Akaviri, okay? So you have 6 factions. Your interaction by doing side quests with each of those factions would, in turn, create and inform your regional reputation. So each one of them has carved up this little island, staked their claim on this little island, and carved out a niche, alright? Except for the natives, who are holding steady where they can, okay? And basically, you doing quests for these factions informs your regional reputation. Now, of course, as the game goes along, you'll start doing major quests, which affect the entire island. These major quests would inform your universal reputation. You also would do quests for various factions within these particular regions, regional reputations, which would inform your factional reputation. So here's how factional reputation would work. Essentially speaking, over the course of the game, you would gain access to, for example, if you start out in the Imperial, if you decide to start out in the Imperial area that they're holding down, like maybe they constructed a town, a largish town at this point, because they've been trying to expand on this island for like 10 years. So people have established themselves there. Merchants have established themselves there, the East Empire Company, all that type of shit, okay? But that means there would also be a Thieves Guild there, a Fighters Guild, and a Mages Guild. At the minimum, there'd probably be the Dark Brotherhood somewhere on that island, okay? So basically, you could start doing quests for those particular guilds from that town, and maybe there's like little villages and outposts around there too, as well. Okay, as your factional reputation goes up, you might get a letter of introduction, which would give you a boon to meet someone higher up in this particular large town, small city, whatever you want to call it. That in turn would, let's say, give you access to a regional side quest. So let's say you're going to help them clear out a fortress that's been taken over by Thalamor, okay? Or you've been tasked to get a diplomatic letter to the Akaviri delegation. So basically, like they're gonna team up and do a ceasefire so that they can team up against the Thalamor, some shit like that. You do that, and now you can freely go into Akaviri territory and do side quests for them, because the Empire and Akaviri are making nice with one another, alright? But this also means your regional reputation with the Thalamor would go down. So if you went there, they'd try to kill your ass on sight unless you were disguised. I personally would like to see a return to this type of dynamic gameplay, because here's the thing. Even if you aren't doing anything, you would have these factions fighting against each other. You would have the Empire taking out Thalamor outposts and fortresses. You would have the Thalamor, vice versa, doing the same thing, and the Red Guard taking out other people's shit. So you would have that type of thing, plus sub factions and all that type of stuff. I think that would be a very useful and interesting way to essentially have a game come together, if you will. Which leads me to how the three different how your reputation affects the game. So basically, at the lowest level, you have your factional reputation, which is basically just based upon different factions. So how you're related in a faction. So for example, if you it doesn't make sense in previous Fallout game, previous Elder Scrolls games, for you, especially Oblivion and Skyrim, for you to be a magic user and then join the Fighters Guild and be able to really be high up in that, because you're not really kitted out for that. Yeah, you might be able to do the missions, but they want you to use, combat. So I would propose to add sub-factions to different groups that cater to different playstyles. So if you want to be a magic user, but you also if you want to be a melee class, but you also want to have the ability to fight, well, guess what? The Mages Guild has Spell Blades, all right, and they are a melee class that can also use magic. And so you can join them and learn some Spellblade magic. And that's a sub-faction to the Mages Guild faction. So essentially, that would basically be your in. Like let's say you're an assassin, you want to join the Dark Brotherhood, but you're not a particularly stealthy thing. So you would instead become a different type of assassin, like a Terminator. Like you're not sneaking around, you're going in murdering the shit out of people. And a slaughterer, a manslayer, if you will. And sneaking around ain't your stuff, right? So that would be a sub-faction. But basically, sub-factions would be a way to cater to people who don't have typical builds. And, you know, your factional reputation would give you kind of an edge in your regional reputation. So, you know, like if you have a high ranking with the Fighters Guild and you go to a town that's basically under the control of the Empire, they'll help you out. They'll be like, hey, we like what you're doing. You know, we hear that you're proficient at arms because you're a member of the Fighters Guild, and we need some help. And people will be more likely to give you access to quests, shit like that. Now, if you basically help out that town, or that city, or that village, help out enough people, you'll get regional reputation. Your regional reputation will go up, which means people will hear about you and like you. Now, your regional reputation can only go so high in that region, but if you do things that affect the entire area, like big things, like there's a necromancer trying to basically turn himself into a lich, like a lesser Manny Marco, and you stopped him, and he was doing some really fucked up shit in order to pull this off, and you stopped him. That's a major world, major quest, which would help your overall universal reputation. Do enough universal reputation boosting side quests, and people will like you. But you can also go in the opposite direction and become universally despised, which means everyone will try and kill your ass if you want to, or hold disdain for you. So if you basically become a merchant who deals with anyone, including bandits, like you cut deals with bandits and shit, and they're basically like, you know, people find out about it, you can be despised by a civilized factions. All right. Now, the Thieves Guild, they'll probably like your ass, but, you know, most other civilized factions will be like, we are very hesitant to help you. And if they do business with you, it'll be at your detriment, unless you have a very high speech skill. So that's how I would like that particular, how I would like reputation to influence factions. Next, in the next part of this visual essay, I will talk about how, or should I say segment of this visual essay, I will talk about how I would like to see in my ideal Elder Scrolls game, how I would like side quests to be handled. Okay, so side questing in the Elder Scrolls series kind of sucks because everything is predicated on them basically giving you a quest, say go here with an arrow mark. And this has been since Oblivion, it's been like this. And you really weren't encouraged to explore. Now, you had to explore Morrowind. Like, if they told you, go to this town, you kind of had to run your ass down there and discover the shit. It wasn't given to you, which actually made it into a better game in some regards. Now, with that being said, how could I don't want the game to be frustrating for people who are used to kind of the hand-holding of modern games. So here's my caveat, okay? When you're given a side quest or anything like that, you can get side quests from reading books, listening to people, and it goes into your adventurer's journal. Your adventurer's journal basically is kind of like your catch-all tome that lets you keep up with information that might be useful in combat. Now, in game, you know, for exploration and shit like that. Now, so for example, you can enter into a tavern and you can hear people talking about, I've heard of bodies disappearing from the catacombs in the graveyard, and no one knows who's doing this, and we can't catch it. We can't catch the person who's doing this, but it seems to be happening, late at night is the only thing we know, and that it gets entered into your adventures journal. Now, at this point, you're given a choice. All right, you can go up to this person and talk to them and get more information from them, and that's where you would basically get the marker that gives you, like, almost handholds your ass into what you have to do in order to start this quest. Or you can just go to the graveyard at X, and wait, hiding, and see someone doing some shit in the catacombs and chase their asses down, and that's how you start that quest. And maybe incentivize people to actually figure things out for themselves. Like, maybe you get a boost to how much experience you get by figuring things out yourself versus them being told. And maybe, for other quests where, it's some shit you have to discover, maybe in order for you to find that shit out, like if you go someplace to, like, say, an adventurers guild or some shit, they're like, look, it's on your map. They'll mark it on your map. But your map is a physical map. Like, it's not a map of the island. It's a map that's, like, that you have to fill out yourself. Of course, you can pay money and they'll tell you where the shit is and then put it on the in-game map. But that's your penalty. You're losing money. And generally, the higher tier of the quest, the more expensive it is. So for, like, a low tier quest, 10 gold. For a high tier quest, like 500, 1,000, 5,000, some shit like that. So you basically pay. This game is not catering. To the uninformed when it comes to these styles of titles. So with that being said, I guess I have to go over the next segment, where I will talk about factional rewards. So with that being said, let's get to it. So it doesn't make sense in previous Elder Scrolls games for you to become the leader of the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Thieves Guild, etc., etc. Okay, maybe the Thieves Guild in Oblivion, because you basically really did put in the work. But aside from that, it doesn't make sense for you to become the leader of any type of guild. Just some random wanderer to become the leader of a guild, because there's a lot of administration involved with it. Instead, I would say, depending on what your class is and what the faction is you're working with, like, if you are a melee faction, you can become the leader of the Fighters Guild, because you're a fighter, you're a warrior, so it would make sense that you would be, good at utilizing that particular, you would be the leader of that group. If you are a magic user, it would make sense that you would basically become the leader of a magic using faction, because you're a magic user. That's just, basic shit. Now, however, I do think there should be incentives for you to join factions, and not just, oh, well, I want to get this awesome suit of armor. So here's my idea. The faction reward should be connected to what the faction is. So, the Thieves Guild, very easy. As you go up in rank in the Thieves Guild, you get access to trainers at the lower end that basically can train you to become a better thief. You can then, as you get higher up in the game, you can put out thieving contracts on your own, which basically let you, let's say you have to go on a side quest where you have to find a particular item. You can send a thief, you can pay a thief to go and find that item for you and bring it to you. And the more money you spend, the faster they'll do it and the higher likelihood they'll come back. So, that's a binny. And As you go higher up, you can actually request contracts from the Thieves Guild. So, for example, let's say you're part of the Imperial faction. You can get a regional faction. You can get the Thieves Guild to target specifically Thalmor supply points, which in turn would weaken their war standing, their combat standing on the island, which would make it easier to take them out. Okay? So factions actually have some bearing in the overall game. Another thing, let's say you join the Fighters Guild, and you're also in the, you join the Hammerfell faction, right? The Sentinel faction. So essentially they're like, hey, if you join them, you can essentially get access to, you can get the Fighters Guild to come in and train, people, the army members of the Sentinel faction, which in turn means that they are better prepared to face in combat. They're high. They have a higher training level, which means they're tougher and can do more cool shit. So, like, basically, factional rewards should have a bearing in game and not just be, this own encapsulated thing. There should be synergy and interconnectedness between the different quests and shit like that. So with that being said, let's wrap this up, and I'll give you a brief overview of what to expect in part 5. So here we go, part 5. So here we go with the conclusion. In conclusion, basically, my ideal Elder Scrolls game should be in a dynamic world where you have reputation, what you do matters, and affects how different factions and regional factions, and as a matter of fact, what people feel about you. And that in turn informs how they come to you with quests and shit like that. That is my ideal Elder Scrolls experience. In part 5, I will discuss gameplay innovations, overhauls, and general ideas. That will come out Friday. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at mrredfoxbsbuster@gmail.com. You can reach me on Twitter at Matthew Wesley, at mrredfox91. You can also reach me on Discord at BSBusters. So peace, good night, have a nice day, and arrivederci.